Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your marriage without your husband's conscious effort so that you feel desired and taken care of and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm talking about your journey to becoming a ridiculously happy wife. My guest, Anna, and her husband fought a lot. Things even got broken sometimes, and she got called nasty names and threatened with divorce. When she started using the 6 intimacy skills, he was suspicious and sarcastic. But today, they have a beautiful marriage, the best it's ever been. How did she do it? Well, she's going to tell us so that you can do it too. That's coming up. But first, let's talk about your journey to becoming a ridiculously happy wife. When you're struggling in your marriage because you're getting hurt or neglected or criticized, it's so discouraging and it's draining. And that's especially true if you've been practicing the 6 intimacy skills that you hear about on this podcast every week, or maybe you read about in the Empowered Wife book or audiobook, and it's just not working. You might start to feel like your situation is hopeless. Maybe your husband has a big character defect that is dragging you down and you don't see it ever changing. It doesn't seem possible to become a ridiculously happy wife. Or maybe the 6 intimacy skills have improved some things for you, but there are still aspects of your marriage that you don't like, but that you feel you probably just have to accept, even though it's a little depressing to think about living the rest of your life that way. Maybe you think that if you and I talked privately about your marriage, I would tell you to just be grateful and stop focusing on what you don't like. But you know what? I'm not interested in having you suck it up and just accept some part of your marriage being miserable. I want you to have your birthright as a woman, which is to feel desired and taken care of and special. I want you to feel loved in all 5 love languages. I mean, why pick just one? And I'm not giving up until you get the marriage you dreamed of when you were a little girl, even if you think you weren't a very realistic little girl. Even if the problems in your marriage seem unfixable. I mean, that's the thrill and what we do around here is make our marriage dreams come true. There's a few reasons this is so important for you to have an all-around fantastic marriage, besides just your own happiness. I mean, your own happiness is very important, and not just to you, but also to your husband and also to your kids. I mean, that's a pretty good reason that you need a shiny, amazing marriage. But another vital reason to create a home that's bursting with playfulness and passion is because that strengthens your marriage. And strong families rely on strong marriages, and strong communities rely on strong families, and strong countries rely on strong communities. I know that you believe in learning and growing to make your marriage better, and that having a strong marriage is important to you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be listening to this podcast right now. You'd be listening to something else. You're more invested and committed than most women when it comes to making your marriage last and thrive. And I admire that very much. The world needs more women like you who think that making your marriage shiny and amazing is important. So if investing your time and energy in your own happiness and desires brings up some guilt for you, like it does for me sometimes, then you can think about this journey you're on to have a strong marriage as part of creating peace on earth, starting with your own marriage. If you're feeling stuck in any way, then I want to invite you to think about what experiment you might be willing to try in order to have a breakthrough. The first thing is going to be to figure out what breakthrough you want to have. What specifically would you be experiencing right now if you had already had that breakthrough? I want you to think about that with me here. What would you be experiencing right now if you had already had that breakthrough that you're wanting in your marriage? And this is where we sometimes see students struggle. You might think that the breakthrough you want isn't possible, or You might be having a hard time articulating what that breakthrough would look like. Or you might be feeling too vulnerable to receive the gifts and the help that are essential to having that breakthrough. And that's because it is vulnerable to receive those gifts and help. You just want to feel better and you just want to feel safe. And one powerful way to get unstuck is to have someone who can see where you're stuck and nudge you in a direction that you hadn't thought of, while also holding you in safe hands. You got to be in safe hands. Not someone to tell you what to do, because only you know what's best for you, but someone to share what she did in a similar situation to create a transformation so that you can decide if it's something you want to experiment with too. So that you become empowered to create your own transformation. That's what the coaches do for the students in the Ridiculously Happy Wife program. And one big reason the Ridiculously Happy Wife program is so effective for helping wives fix their marriages is because of the emotional safety inside. That's also the reason that it's not easy to get in to the Ridiculously Happy Wife program. You can't just go to the website and sign up. No. We usually only let new students join the program after they attend my free masterclass or after they go to the 5-day Adored Wife Challenge, which only happens a couple times a year. And we want to make sure that everyone that we invite into the program will uphold our values, like that having a great marriage is important and that practicing the 6 intimacy skills is the best way to fix your marriage, and that every woman who finds the courage to fix her marriage and become her best self deserves love and support without judgment. Experimenting is scary for me too. I had free-floating terror just starting this podcast a few years ago. I didn't know if I would be able to get guests to come on and share such personal stories, or if I would have something valuable to say every week. I worried I'd get started and then I just would stop. It still feels like an incredible gift every week when a student comes on to share vulnerably, to pay forward what she's learned. And if I hadn't started this podcast, I wouldn't get to hang out with brave women who decided to go all in with fixing their marriages every week. Talking to them makes me feel more courageous. That's why I want to invite you to be a guest on the podcast. Imagine coming on to talk to me one-on-one to share about what you did to get your miracle. Imagine yourself taking a victory lap and me giving you a wife award while you're giving other women hope, because that's what being on the podcast is all about. Even if you're thinking, I would never come on the podcast, I want to invite you to imagine it anyway. One coach trainee who has an amazing transformation in her marriage shared that she imagines herself on the podcast telling her inspiring marriage story as she's falling asleep every night. It's a great way to count your blessings. And sharing your story is part of the connection framework that accelerates your transformation. It takes courage to start a podcast, to come on a podcast, and to join Ridiculously Happy Wife to fix your marriage. But in my experience, fortune favors the brave. Something big is happening here on the Lower Doyle campus, and you are invited. Hundreds of women have become experts on the 6 intimacy skills and transformed their marriages by becoming certified Laura Doyle relationship coaches who live their purpose, have more intimacy, and earn for their families. In my free masterclass, Purpose, Prosperity, and Intimacy, How to Have All Three and Help Others Do the Same, I share directly from our popular relationship coach training and certification course about the number one most important qualification for becoming a successful relationship coach. I also reveal the indispensable first step to having a passionate, peaceful relationship and how to share it with other women. I explain about why our coaches have an unfair advantage over other relationship coaches and counselors. And I go step by step through our proven coaching curriculum and why it's so effective in saving marriages and empowering coaches. Register today for Purpose, Prosperity, and Intimacy. Have all three and help others do the same at lauradoyle.org/purpose. That's lauradoyle.org/purpose. My guest Anna and her husband fought a lot. Things even got broken sometimes, and she got called nasty names and threatened with divorce. When she started using the 6 intimacy skills, he was suspicious and sarcastic. But today, they have a beautiful marriage, the best it's ever been. How did she do it? Well, she's going to tell us, so you can do it too. Anna, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. I'm so excited to hear your story today.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to share it with you and everyone who's listening. It's really helped me out a lot, all of your skills, and gosh, it's just so wonderful.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, this is a victory lap you're taking, coming on the podcast and sharing about all that you've accomplished. This is a celebration of sorts too, for us. So it sounds like you've come a long way, but take us back to the beginning and tell us about what things were like in the bad old days.
Sure. So my husband and I have been married for almost 8 years, and things have kind of been spiraling, I want to say, over the last year, with a lot of fighting, a lot of name calling, a lot of times where we go not speaking to one another for periods of times. I would say we fought about once every 4 days or so. It was pretty bad. One of the biggest fights that we had most recently was over Thanksgiving. We took a family trip with our kids, and we just got into small fights, and then it built up into one big blowout fight. He and I were having a date night at a hotel, and we got into such a big fight. We ended up kind of walking on different sides of the street, literally, back to the hotel, and had an awful fight. And fell asleep just after calling each other some really nasty things, and threats of divorce, and then having to ride out the rest of the vacation with his family after that huge fight. It was so uncomfortable and so horrible. The whole thing just almost makes me not want to travel again, even just from the experience of that, and thinking about it. It just it makes me nauseous.
Wow, it sounds awful. And here you are, like this is supposed to be a romantic time. You were in this hotel. It was a date night. Should have been fun, romantic. And it was just the opposite. It sounds like very painful.
Right. And things between us had been basically that anything would cause an argument. It wasn't necessarily that what we were arguing about was super important or super, like something that most people would argue about. It was just, we were so on edge with each other that anything we said to each other was kind of taken as an attack on the other person. And so that's really, I think, what it was. But it had just gotten to that point where, we were both walking on eggshells.
So it didn't feel like much emotional safety.
Yes, that's absolutely true.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you guys were fighting a lot even before this trip, it sounds like, and things would get broken.
Yes. So my husband had told me that I was very negative, which I knew I was kind of a negative person. I had a hard time sometimes seeing the positive in things or having a positive attitude about different things. But he also told me that I was controlling, and I didn't understand that because I really worked hard to, allow him to feel free to do what he wanted to do. And I didn't think I was that way. But I guess, after your program, I really saw how I was controlling in some ways. And he felt very uncomfortable with me just doing things that he should feel okay doing, going to work out at the gym or staying late at work because he's, needs to catch up, things like that. He just, even though I didn't say, don't do this, he just felt like he couldn't be comfortable. And so that kind of led into him just feeling, I guess, just defensive overall. And so a couple of times things did get broken. I would ask a question, and to me, it was okay. It was an okay thing to ask. To him, it was disrespectful. And so, yeah, a couple of times when I asked these questions after we had been fighting and fighting and fighting, he was so angry and just fed up with me that he broke some of my things, kind of slammed them across the room, and it was very scary. That happened twice.
Oh, terrifying. Because yeah, I know for me, like all those messages about like you shouldn't put up with this kind of like, it's like violent in a way, right? When things are getting broken. And yeah, I just remember being so terrified that that meant there was something wrong with my husband. If, when things like that would happen, what were you thinking when that was happening?
Oh, I was terrified. I really was. I thought, oh my gosh, why is this happening? Why is he reacting this way? I was just trying to have this conversation. I don't see why we can't talk about this. Um, the first time it happened, I actually locked myself in another room. I was scared. And then I was, all these other thoughts are going through my head. Is he going to start hitting me? What else is coming? I was very scared.
Yeah, awful, awful, Anna. And then, and you guys have been married for 8 years. Do you have children?
Yes, we do. We have three.
3 children. Okay. So, how was this impacting your kids with these fights?
Well, luckily, I don't think this impacted my kids at all because they weren't around when it happened. But certainly the arguing, my oldest, who is 6, it really affected him. And then my middle child, who's 3, it affected him as well. He would start yelling if we were yelling, and my 6-year-old would be asking questions. But for the most part, even though we were fighting, most of the time we kept it to after the kids were in bed. So I think luckily they were saved from a lot of that, but they weren't totally shielded from that, unfortunately.
Yeah. And it sounds like, just from your point of view, when the kids were asleep was kind of almost a dangerous time in terms of that's when things could escalate with the fights, or when the kids weren't there.
Yes. It was a time that my husband and I had to ourselves. We could discuss anything that we needed to discuss that maybe we didn't want to talk about with the kids around. We both work. I have the kids a lot of the time. And so we don't really have time during the day to do that. And so in the evenings, we would do that. But it was really hard because we had a lot of things that needed to be discussed that I just didn't know how we could ever get to actually talking about them in a way that was productive or a way that didn't cause a fight.
So you mentioned that he was threatening divorce, I think, right? That he was saying.
He was, yes.
And how about you? Were you also thinking that might be a better solution?
Not at this point. No, I wasn't. I was really committed to working things out. I expressed to him that I didn't want a divorce and that I wanted to figure things out. And he was pretty willing to work with me. He told me, "You're so negative and so controlling. You need counseling." And so I said, well, okay, because things are so bad. Like, what else can I do? I want to fix this. And he said, you need to put all your effort into this counseling. If you need help with the kids, if you need to put your work down for a bit, because I have my own business, he said, just put all your efforts into it. So I said, okay. And I said, I'm fine with that. I think you need counseling as well. If we're in this together, we can work. I can work on me. You can work on whatever you think you need to work on, and we'll do this together. So we started that. But as I was going through the counseling process, I came across your program. And so I started counseling at about the same time I started your program, which was around December of last year. And after I don't know, a month of counseling, I just didn't want to do it anymore. The counselor would tell me how, it was my husband, it was his problem. And even though I kept telling him, hey, that's, yes, he does. He has his own things he needs to work on, but I don't want to focus on that because I'm not in control of him and what he does. I need to work on me. And these are the things I want to work on. And I had to redirect this counselor multiple times, so then I ended up just kind of dropping the counseling thing and really just focusing on your program, because the counseling was not really helping me. It would just kind of make me more angry with my husband that he was, breaking things and calling me nasty names, and that it was all his fault. And so that didn't work out very well for me.
Yeah.
So I found your program actually during my drive home from that horrible Thanksgiving trip. So my husband and I actually had taken two separate vehicles to the airport and we drive several hours. The airport's several hours away from where we live. And my son had a doctor's appointment early on that day, the day before the flight. And so I was there ahead of time with him, and he drove later. So on my way back, I was just, suffering, thinking about how awful that Thanksgiving trip was. And I was looking for something to listen to on the 2-hour drive back. And I came across your podcast, and I listened to maybe one or two episodes, and I thought, wow, this is really inspiring. And it sounded just too good to be true. I thought, I was a little skeptical, thinking, this might just be one of those things that, people say, oh, it works, but really it's impossible to implement, or, it doesn't really work. But I felt it to be just so compelling that when I got home, I looked you up, and I came across your roadmap. And so I downloaded the roadmap, and I looked at it, and I thought, well, this seems more practical than what I thought. And then I joined in one of the meetings and kind of to learn more. And I thought, wow, this is actually really neat. And then I listened to your book, The Empowered Wife. I listened to it through audio, because I'm a busy mother, and so that worked out wonderfully for me. And I pretty much devoured that in 2 days. And after that, I wanted to try the program, and from there, it's just been great. But yeah, it's so funny that I found you on the way back from that horrible vacation. So it was very lucky that I was kind of just looking for something like that, came across your podcast, and had the opportunity even to listen to that, because I was away from my husband in the car. So yeah, very, very lucky.
That vacation ended up being the breakdown before the breakthrough.
Right. The two were so close together. It's kind of funny in that way.
Yeah. Well, and there must have been a part of you that thought, I mean, you were very open. I give you so much credit, Anna. When he was saying you were negative and controlling, I really hear you being so accountable about that, and being open, like, yeah, I do want to change that. But there must have been a part of you that also thought it's all his fault. He's breaking things. He's saying nasty. He's being like verbally abusive. Is that how you were looking at it too, or?
Yes, definitely. Okay. I definitely thought he has a problem as well. Maybe I am negative. maybe I do need to work on some control issues that I don't know exactly what they are, but I'm open to looking into that. But also, you know, you have aggression issues. You need to work on those. So that
Right.
was definitely something that was going through my head for sure.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it just feels so unfair in that, in that situation when you're thinking like, wait, I need to work on this. What about you, buddy? And he's 50% of the relationship. So how did you get past that and become,
You
yeah.
know, Laura, this really goes back to why I want to stay in the marriage and why I felt like it was worth saving. But my husband actually is also a lot of times very accountable for his own actions. And so when I told him, you know, well, you have stuff to work on too, he said, yes, I do. I realize that. I'm open to counseling. I'm open to working on myself. And so, I did feel, even though we were fighting so much and it was, a very closed relationship as far as there was no emotional intimacy, there was no safety in our conversations, but I knew that he he didn't want to get divorced. He wanted to work on himself and he was open to that. So,
Wow.
although I did feel like he was wrong, I also was comforted by the fact that he was open to working on himself as well.
Yeah. Oh, I get that. That is what a great quality of your husband's too. He's very accountable as well. It sounds like you guys match in that regard. You're both accountable people. So, all right. So you got into the program while you were in the counseling, but what did you start doing differently than what you had been doing?
Oh, so I am, let's just say I've always been a very good student. And so when I looked at your program, I really tried to do what my husband asked me to do and to really dive into working on myself. And so I really ate up all of the material that you provided in your program. I got on a ton of group calls, listened to other women's stories, what they were doing, the advice from the coaches who are, gosh, they're so amazing. I mean, even studying all the skills, the things that the coaches bring to the table is just, it blows my mind every single time. It is just, they're absolutely amazing. But so I was really practicing a lot of the skills simultaneously, and I would get pretty good at one, and then I would kind of refocus on a different one. But I think the main skill that I used that really changed my behavior and what I was doing with my husband was staying on my own paper, meaning that I would focus on my actions, my behaviors, my emotions, what I'm accountable for, instead of looking at my husband and saying, you did this, you should feel this way, you have these emotions. And I really just he said he was working on it. That's his thing to work on. What he does, if he's in a bad mood, if he's going to break things, whatever the situation is, that's for him to work on. That's for him to be in control of. That is not for me to even really judge or try to control. That's all him. And it was so freeing for me. And this, I think, helped with my negativity as well. It was so freeing for me to just not be in control of that and not think that I had to be in control of it. It was like a weight lifted off my shoulders. I felt so much lighter just knowing I'm not responsible for that. That's him. He's responsible for himself. And if he comes home cranky and he's rude towards me, he probably just had a bad day. And, that's for him to work out. That's not for me to judge or to say, hey, you're being really rude to me. I didn't deserve that. I just give him his space and, he comes out of his cranky mood and a lot of times he apologizes now. So, I mean, that was a huge game changer for me, was just focusing on me, really on me, and staying away from focusing on him and what he's done wrong, and how he feels, and all of that. So that was probably the best thing that I've done that has really changed our relationship.
Wow. Wow. Well, I'm super impressed because I think it's hard when somebody's breaking things, right? Or there's like, that's pretty big drama to be like, how am I showing up? Or how do I feel in this moment? But it sounds like, and I hear you're a really good student of the skills. What did you reach for, like when something was going on and you wanted to just be on Anna's paper? Like, how would you do it?
Oh gosh. So to be on my own paper, I would just literally, I think, just redirect my thoughts. Um, and I would, so just say this, I mean, because this is a common scenario. Husband comes home, he's had a rough day, he's cranky. I say something to him and he responds in a snarky manner, maybe. And, you know, so far I haven't done anything to deserve that. I've just been at home. I welcomed him, whatever the situation. I know that everything I've done has been squeaky clean. I haven't done
Oh,
anything wrong.
love
And
that.
so it's just way easier for me now to say, well, he must have had a bad day. It's not about me because I know I didn't do anything. So it's really pretty easy now after working on that skill a lot to just know that I did nothing wrong. And so, again, that feeling is so freeing that I just don't really worry about it. And if he's being extra cranky, I let him have his time to be cranky. I just kind of do something else. I don't bother him. And he gets over it, just like I would if I were cranky. I would get over it too. And, give me 20 minutes. Maybe I just need 20 minutes to unwind. And then after that, I'm good.
He's just a mere mortal man. He's going to be cranky sometimes, just like
Right.
you might be cranky sometimes. Wow. So, and it sounds like this has really helped prevent some of the arguments that you were having before, some of the fights.
It has. And I got to mention the second thing I've been doing, which I mean, it's very closely tied to the first one, but using duct tape. So when he says something and I really want to say something back, I just put on the invisible duct tape and I just don't say anything. Or, I was always an oversharer. Sometimes there were things on my mind and I just wanted to say them out loud. And now I just know I can think about those things before I speak them. And I can ask myself, is this productive in our marriage? Or is this something that he needs to know? Is this thought, important enough to say it out loud? Or is this just me having, for example, a negative thought about something or worrying about something that doesn't really have a place in our marriage or is not realistic even? It's just I don't know, just a bad thought. You get paranoid about something or you just have this moment of weakness where you start thinking, well, what if he's thinking this about me? And why do I need to say that out loud? All it does is cause a fight. Or if he, for example, says something that's a little argumentative, I don't need to meet that with the same force. I can either stay silent or I can, respond in a neutral manner, like I'm listening. I hear what you're saying. I hear you. And so the duct tape has really helped because I didn't realize how many unnecessary negative things that I say during the day to him that really make him feel that, I was a negative person. Because I would just always feel the need to say these out loud when it was not necessary.
Wow. Well, this sounds like a superpower. Or do you still consider yourself a negative person?
No, no,
No.
it's so weird. In psychology, they kind of teach you that sometimes your facial features, they've done studies, if you smile, you'll actually feel happier. And so the less negative things I say, the less negative I feel as a person. It's just crazy. But I really, I don't feel like a negative person anymore. I actually feel like a pretty positive person.
Wow. And there you go. Yeah, I see a beautiful smile on your face
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
So, and and I hear you saying this feels better. You feel happier. Is that right?
Oh, yes. I feel so much happier. I just feel honestly, gosh, like I had these, personal issues that my husband did bring up that were true, control issues about, not about what he does or where he goes per se, that most people might think of as controlling, but the way that things get done around the house, the way the kids are handled, those types of control issues. And now I've really just, I don't know, it just doesn't bother me anymore. I'm okay with letting him do things the way he wants to do them. Sometimes he'll ask questions, he might be doing something with the kids that he normally doesn't do. And he might say, how do you normally do this? And I just kind of respond, well, I normally do it this way. And then it's up to him to choose whether or not he's going to do the same thing or decide to do something else with the kids. And it's just, again, it's like a weight lifted off my shoulder. I don't have to manage that mental task for all these different things. He can manage those things as well. And so it is kind of that. I think moms have a lot of this too, especially mothers, but you're juggling so many things mentally, cognitively. You've got, all these different things to do. You're carrying these lists around, oh, and then in addition, a lot of times I found out a lot of women think we've got to carry around our husband's mental tasks as well and what he needs to do. And that is a heavy load to carry. It's a heavy, heavy load. So now that I'm not carrying it, I do feel a lot more like free and happy and lighter. So it's great.
That's awesome. So, and what else? What other skills did you, or what else did you do to transform your marriage?
Oh gosh. Vulnerability has been one of the things that I've had probably the most trouble with, is being vulnerable. But one of the things that we talk about in your program is trying to hear the heart message of your husband. And so, what that means basically is, sometimes he might say something that sounds aggressive or rude or mean, but really digging into what is behind that. And there's usually something that shows that he actually cares about you. So I'll give you a quick example. I just had surgery, and my husband was asking all these questions about my recovery time. And, he's been getting a little antsy, come home, come home. And it was aggravating me a little bit. I thought, well, this is kind of rude. I'm trying to rest away from the kids so I can fully recover and come back and, be my best self. But I was reflecting on it, thinking, well, what is he saying? And I think he just really misses me, because we have had this really good marriage lately. And we spend a lot of time together. And so we've been away from each other for about 4 days now. And I'm just hearing that he just really misses me. And maybe he doesn't know how to express it in the way that sounds like, hey, I miss you. Can you come home? Or maybe he's nervous about being vulnerable with that himself. But I try and take that kind of stuff, that reflecting that I do with my husband, and I try and be vulnerable in that same way with myself. So if I start reacting, for example, in a negative way, saying, this isn't fair, I don't feel like you care about my health, that sort of thing. Instead, I think, what is my heart message behind that? And it's just basically, I'm scared. I'm scared that I'm going to overdo it. I'm scared that my health will suffer. And so I really try to turn it around and say, okay, well, this is how I can be vulnerable with him. It's good for our marriage. He can get a better understanding of really what I'm thinking, and he can respond to that instead of responding to a rude comment or a nasty attitude about the situation, and we can work it out. And so that's been the toughest one for me, honestly, is being vulnerable, because I have my whole life had walls up around people because I didn't want to get hurt. I didn't want to reveal those types of emotions. And so it's something I'm definitely working on, but one that I need to continue working on for sure, because it doesn't come naturally for me.
I bet your husband loves it though. How did he respond when you said, or did you say I'm scared to him?
I did. I did. And I also said, I don't want to fight with you. I love you. I care about you. I know you've sacrificed a lot. I know um, you've really been helping me so much, and I'm so grateful for that. I said, I'll come home. And so there was no fight with that. Everything cooled down. And, before, I think because of the way that things were, it would have just escalated into this huge thing. Maybe I'd be home, we'd be mad at each other. And I'm not home yet, but I'm planning on going home tonight. And I know it's going to be a good evening. And because I'm going to show up in a respectful way, I'm going to be grateful. And how else can he respond to that? He's a good person. If I show up that way, he'll respond. I know, I have no doubt in my mind, he'll respond in a very positive way, and we'll have a good night. It's all up to me. If I come with a bad attitude, it's going to be a bad night. So I just know with those skills, I'm very confident that I'm in charge of this, and I'm in charge of the way that our evening goes, and it's going to be nice.
You sound so empowered, Anna. I'm very moved to hear about all the power that you bring and all the wisdom that you have about how to create the kind of night you want to have when you come home tonight. And I hear your confidence. It's beautiful. It's endearing. It makes me feel connected to you. And also, like, I just want to cheer for you. I just like, whoa, like, oh, she made a touchdown, because that is, I think it's something that it sounds like eluded you, this knowing how to use your power wisely.
Yes, I have to say, I was just, I felt so powerless and out of control before. Like you're in a car, but you're not steering the car, and it's just, all these different things come up, and it just takes all these turns and twists, and you have no idea how to gain control, but you're really trying and you can't do it. And now, after practicing the skills so diligently, I've been doing it over and over again. And, aside from the very, very beginning when he was very skeptical about what was going on, it works every time. Like, I know I'm in charge of this. I know I'm in charge of how our evening goes and the tone, because he is a good person. He's a very good man. He's a good husband. And, if I show up and I'm positive and grateful for all that he's done, because he has done quite a lot for me over the course of the last week, it's going to be a good night. I mean, I would bet on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too. I'd have to be betting in your favor on that, just from what you're saying. So when we go back to when he wasn't responding that well in the beginning, like he was responding with some cynicism, some sarcasm, it sounds like, right? Skepticism, I think you said. How did
Yes.
you handle that? That must be kind of discouraging, because you're thinking, I know I'm showing up the right way and he's reacting badly. Like, what did you do with that?
Oh gosh. The group meetings really helped me, the group coaching calls, because I heard so much from other women about similar things. And then going back to the program content helped me out a lot too, just knowing that, hey, you're kind of changing the steps. You're behaving in a different way, you're acting differently. It's going to take them time to adjust. So I really, really leaned on that and just kind of put my faith in it, that if I kept doing it, eventually, I don't know how long, but eventually he would stop making sarcastic remarks or saying, well, yeah, this is great, but I mean, it's probably not going to last. that he would stop saying things like that. It was an ouch, but it's, I just tried to hang in there as best I could because I honestly didn't really have any other choice than to really give this my best shot. And I was very committed to immersing myself in the program and really trying my best to work the skills as much as I could, even though in the beginning I would mess them up a lot. But yeah, so I really just leaned on that, knowing that it was common for husbands to really not be used to that sudden change and to kind of resist it a little bit or be skeptical. And so I just kind of waited it out and used as much strength as I could muster from myself to just try not to react to it, try not to respond to it, and just keep going. And so that's what I did.
Great job. So it did take some faith that he wasn't all, lovey-dovey and so excited and happy at first. It sounds like it was just
Right.
you kind of on your own, single-handedly doing this. You mentioned he was in counseling too, I think, right? Earlier? Was he
Yes.
going to counseling? And so, and you were kind of staying off of his paper about that, but did you feel like, oh, well, his counseling probably already, or that also enhanced your relationship? Or, I mean, how did that go?
Not really. The opposite. He would share with me. I guess by this point we did have some intimacy that we got back. So I want to say from starting your program, pretty much right when I started, the fights were we were still fighting, but they were less intense. So things weren't being broken. We weren't at that level anymore. So the intensity of the fights was less, although we were still arguing quite a lot at the very beginning. But after about a month of being in your program, things were starting to cool off quite a bit. And we were kind of regaining some intimacy, and things were going a lot better, a lot smoother. Like I said, the fights were not as intense. They were pretty mild, I guess. And so he was sharing with me some of the stuff that his counselor said about me because he would share with her, his issues. And, I thought, well, I don't need to know all this, but he wanted to share it. So I kind of just let him say what he needed to say, but it wasn't pleasant. She would say things about me that were hard to hear. And I thought, well, how could this person say these things about me and they don't know me? Like, he told me she had said that I was too emotionally damaged. I would probably never recover and I would just be the way that I am. Yeah. Big
Oh,
ouch.
oh,
Big ouch.
big ouch.
Yeah.
Wow. It'd be
Yeah.
really hard to know your husband's. I wouldn't like my husband to go talk to someone that said that about me. That would feel awful. Like she's not on my team, that's for sure. Not on our team.
Right. And it actually is just bringing tears to my eyes right now because it's somewhat of a fresh wound still to hear that. But I know it's not true. So it's just kind of one of those things that you hear it and it's like, wow, that was a pretty deep cut. Because, this is a professional. This is someone that my husband is kind of counting on to guide him and to help him. But, despite that, I said, well, that's okay. I've been told in my life, you're going to be like this or like that, or you can't do this or that. I mean, we've all probably been told that at some point. Someone is skeptical about what we can do. And I've done a lot for myself, I think, in my life. And so that kind of got me through that wound. Like, hey, just because someone says that, that doesn't mean that it's true. So, I've just got to move forward and I'm going to stay off his paper. If he likes this counselor, fine. That's fine. That's his business. Like I said, maybe it was just a quick, comment, because he assured me he was working on some of his own issues. So I don't know the extent of that conversation and it's really not my business. So I said, as long as our marriage is not getting worse, then okay, I'm okay with that. I mean, I'm going to have to be okay with it because it's not my thing to control. So I just left it and
Yeah.
tried to refocus.
And
Hmm.
he still sees that counselor, sounds like.
I don't think he's seen her in a few weeks, and I'm also okay with that.
Yeah, me too. Because I kind of don't like her at all.
I
I'm not a
don't
fan.
either.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and really, it's interesting because your counselor was saying it was his fault, and his counselor is saying you're damaged. So that pathway, there would have been a pretty different outcome to your marriage, it sounds like.
I think so. I mean, it's like an eye roll for me. I go to one, he goes to one. They both say it's the other person's fault. Everyone's pointing their fingers in the other direction, and it's like, well, that's useless. So, I mean, I thought, well, it doesn't really matter whose fault it is. If we want to be in this marriage, one of us is going to have to put down our pride and say, it's my fault. And I was willing to do that. I was willing to say, whatever. I don't know if it's truly all my fault. But I'm going to say it's my fault. I'm negative. I'm controlling, and I need to work on myself. And those things are absolutely true. Um, Absolutely, they were true. They were very true. And I've come such a long way since I started your program, and there are things certainly that I need to work on, but I really feel a lot better about who I am as a person um, after working your program for the last several months.
Oh, wow, this gives me goosebumps head to toe because it's remarkable, right? It's not that easy to say, you know what, it's my fault. I'm going to work on myself. I'm going to do what's in my control. But that's exactly what you've done. And I mean, tell us what your marriage is like now, because it sounds like you've got some great results.
Oh yeah, it's really nice. So let's see, it's been since December and it's almost April. So just in these last few months, it's been great. We have an excellent marriage. We've had some struggles, some financial stuff going on, but us as a couple, we're great. So like before, I told you how those evenings were brutal. We would have these arguments, and I never thought I could express what I wanted to say because it would start a fight, or, I had to walk on eggshells. I shouldn't even bring it up. There's all this important stuff just going by the wayside because I was nervous to upset him or to say something wrong because I didn't know how I was being so negative and controlling, and I couldn't manage that. And now evenings are like my favorite part of the day. We normally, when I'm not recovering from surgery, we watch a movie together, or we just spend time in our room together. He might do a little bit of work. I might work on a puzzle, or I might do some work myself, and we visit about our day. We laugh about things. We relax together. We've got a pretty big bathroom, so it might be like he's getting ready for bed, I'm getting ready for bed, and we're just taking our time. And everything is just very relaxed, very pleasant. um he stays home a lot more, like he works from home more because he's not trying to get away from me. And we just get along. It's just easy. Like, it's just weird to say that, but it's easy to get along with him. And like I said, if he comes home cranky, I just give him his space. He just needs a little time to unwind, and that's not a big deal. And even if I get out of line, which I do occasionally, I might say something that I shouldn't. He is way more understanding and forgiving. And it's not the situation where if I accidentally said something that, or not even accidentally, but I said something small that shouldn't cause an argument, it would blow up. Now, if I do that, it's like he gives me a pass. He realizes, well, she's been working hard on herself. She does a lot. We love each other. It's okay. Or if there is an argument, it's not really an argument. It might be like more like a slight heated debate for a little bit. and then things just kind of cool off and we're good and we're not fighting. So it's just a really pleasant, easy marriage. We're just together and we enjoy each other's company and we spend more time together. It's really, really easy.
I love that. I love that you're using the word easy and relaxed and easy. Um, so, and the fighting is a lot less, it sounds like. How has this impacted your kids, you think?
Oh gosh. Yeah, our kids are very emotionally sensitive. They know when things, I guess all kids are, they know when things are going on. So yeah, they've been happy, they've been good. I don't see them screaming the way that they were before about, when we're talking and they try to like yell over us or they start asking questions. I mean, they're just normal kids now. They certainly do scream, but they're screaming because they're playing and it's not something like, hey, I'm in the middle of this argument. So I feel so much better about that. Like being able to show them that, hey, mom and dad are okay. Mom and dad are friends. We all love each other and support each other. And that's just how it is. So there hasn't been any of that from our kids in a very long time, probably since the very beginning of the program, even when my husband was skeptical, because even though he was skeptical for about, I want to say 3 weeks to a month, there was some skepticism there. He was still responding to the skills, though, in a way, as far as everything was very diffused. All of the negativity was starting to diffuse, and it was leaving our relationship. Even in the early stages, even when he was skeptical, it was still going, and it just hasn't come back. So that's just been great.
Yeah, it sounds like you had a lot of hope, even though it wasn't totally smooth the whole time, especially in the
Yep.
beginning. But it feels you sound very secure, and there just sounds like a lot of emotional safety at your house, which is pretty cool. And it's really only been, it sounds like 90 days or 4 months, maybe at the most.
Yeah, it hasn't been that long at all. So, yeah, probably a little more than 90 days, but 4 months maybe, between 90 days and 4 months. And gosh, it is probably since mid-February, I want to say it's been really, really smooth sailing. I never even knew that a marriage could be so easy because people always make it sound like, oh, you got to work at it, you got to work at it. And well, if you're doing, you're putting your effort into the right things, it's really actually not that much work. Not any extra work than you'd be putting in, certainly doing other things. And you get more out of it by using these skills for sure.
Wow, I just love that. So, Anna, what would you say to a woman who is where you were, where her stuff's getting broken and they're walking on the opposite side of the streets back to the hotel and she doesn't even want to, go back to that hotel ever again because it was such a traumatic, awful fight. And and there's just doesn't seem to be a way out of these arguments, and there's divorces being thrown around. And now she wants to have what you have, where it feels easy and light, and she realizes her husband misses her, and she realizes that she feels scared. And then when you're together, like he's wanting to be home more so he can be around you, and it just feels so easy and light. What would you say to her? What's your best tip?
Oh gosh. My best tip is to start your program and really just dive in and commit to it. Commit to the group coaching calls, the one-on-one calls if you really need them. Commit to all the lessons and really practicing the skills. Practice with whoever you can, and really just put your faith in it. I've seen so many women make so much progress in their marriages, and it's so cool. Our culture today is like, well, people get divorced and it didn't work out and it's awful. And it's just so inspiring to be around other women who have the same goals, who have said, it doesn't matter what you did. I want to be accountable for myself, and I am willing to do that. And I'm going to work on me, and I'm going to learn these skills and just really, really dive into those. I guess one thing that I could say that really just struck me, maybe it was early February, somewhere around there. I don't know how it came up, but my husband said to me, you're amazing. I'm the inferior spouse. So, in other words, the tables have turned. I got so good at the skills that he really thought, you're so good at that. I'm not even keeping up. And he doesn't even know about any of this. I've never told him what I'm doing. So he has no idea. Um, but I have to really advocate for your skills, because to me, even when you go to counseling, and even when you have a really fantastic counselor who is helping you work on yourself and your marriage, the way that they explain how to do things is very confusing. It's very case by case basis. Like, oh, if you're in this situation, do this, or if you're in that situation, do that. And I just found it so useless, because I would never be in that exact situation and know what to do. Whereas now I have this, toolkit in the back of my brain that when there's something that occurs in our marriage, a conversation, whatever, I just kind of reach back in my toolkit, and I know a couple of tools I can use. And they're very clear, and they're very easy to understand. And it's easy to understand how to apply them as well, especially with practice. So, I mean, the clarity is just mind blowing to me. That's the best part of this program, is it's so clear and it's so easy to understand. Now, it's not easy always to implement everything, but it is very practical. So I would say, if you need help with your marriage, if you're looking to, change the culture of your marriage, definitely, you need these skills. Nobody teaches us these skills. And like I said, there's only a few of them, and you've got, then you've got that really, really strong toolkit at your disposal whenever you need it. And it's so helpful. I mean, it changes your marriage. It does.
It sounds like it's changed you.
Yes. It'll change you for the better too. And I've heard so many other women say the same thing. Even, women who were in process of divorce, or even, husbands not living at home with them. And it changes them so much that they're even at peace with whatever outcome there might be. While they're working on getting their marriage back, they're okay. And they're at peace with that. Like, hey, this is what it is. And I'm working on myself, and I'm working on these skills. And whatever happens, I'll be okay. So it really does. It changes you, and it'll change your marriage and your relationships with other people as well. Coworkers, friends. You'll be a better friend, I think, and a better coworker as well with other people in those business relationships, professional relationships.
Wow. Amazing. Well, you certainly are an incredible student, Hannah. Congratulations on what you've accomplished in fixing your marriage, creating such a peaceful, easy, light culture. What do you think you would say to Anna if you could go back in time and tell her what you know now?
Well, thank you so much for the compliment and acknowledging the work that I've put in. I really appreciate that. I would say to Anna, if I could go back, here's what you need if I hadn't found it yet. And I would tell myself, it's going to work. Keep doing it. Keep doing it.
Just keep going. Well, incredible. Yeah, I'm just so inspired to hear what you were able to do. And it seems like a very short period of time that you've transformed your marriage, yourself, your family, given those 3 kids a home court advantage that they weren't going to have before you really took accountability, responsibility, for yourself, and you're cleaning up your side of the street. And I just, I think you did a good job ending world divorce today by sharing so authentically about what was happening in your marriage. So I couldn't be more grateful to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm so grateful for your program. I mean, I'd be lost without it right now. I really, truly would be. So thank you.
My pleasure. I'm so glad we found each other, Anna.
Me too.
If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, I'll talk about being married to an angry man. 3 mistakes wives make. In the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that when I'm asked, would you like a receipt? I'm still ruminating about whether I made the correct choice on paper or plastic. I'm like, I'm not really taking questions right now.